Our Region's Business is sponsored by PNC for the Achiever in You.
Here at the Carnegie Library in Squirrel Hill, knowledge is as timely as it is timeless. All Carnegie libraries offer free access to computers and the internet for the most up-to-date information, while providing a forever home for ideas that date back as far as the printed word itself. So it would seem fitting that we reach back into the Our Region's Business archive, which is not quite as expansive as the library's, mind you, but does span a decade. We'd like to revisit the first author we had on the show, Jim Rassenberger, talking about his book, High Steel. I was fascinated, I was reading through the book about the Andrew Carnegie story, because in my own mind, I would never attach him to skyscrapers in any direct way.
Well, I mean, you just can't get over what a visionary Carnegie was. Not only, anticipating the steel, how much steel, the role steel would play in American culture and architecture, but when he saw the steel rails drying up, he started looking around, and it was the very first steel frame skyscraper was built in Chicago in 1883, and it was going to be iron, and the first 6 floors were iron, but then Carnegie managed to convince the architect, a man named William LeBaron Jenney, to try steel. So the next 3 floors were steel. So therefore, the great American steel frame skyscraper was born. It was only 9 stories tall, but that's how it began.
You mentioned the bridge connection, and there's a strong Pittsburgh connection there as well. The Roeblings with their wire rope, the Brooklyn Bridge, and some of that engineering became very important in ultimately the development of skyscrapers.
That's right. The whole thing about steel is that how abruptly it changed the skyline. I write a bit in New York City. The tallest point in Manhattan was the steeple of Trinity Church until 1890. And then suddenly, this almost cataclysmic explosion of buildings occurred. So by the time 1901 rolled around, you have a number of buildings much taller than Trinity steeple. By the time 1912, you have the Woolworth building 800 feet high. I've got this wonderful photograph in the building where you see a man hanging off the Woolworth building, and there are the towers of the Brooklyn Bridge, which were just a little bit shorter than Trinity steeple, way, way down there. And it just gives you a very visual sense of how in just 2 decades, the skyline just was transformed by steel.
You talk about the worker too, and we should emphasize that the book's not just about engineering and architecture and tensile strength of materials, but it's really about the iron workers. It's a very human, personal story.
Well, it's a book about steel, but it's really about the men who lift the steel into the sky. They're called iron workers. They should be called steel workers, but of course, steel workers work in steel mills. They make the stuff. The iron workers are the guys who put it together. And they hoist it up using cranes. They set it into place. Rivet it up. It used to be riveting, now it's bolting it with high-strength bolts, weld it, and then move onwards and upwards. And these guys are absolutely fascinating.
The culture, I'd always heard about the Mohawk Indians from Canada who have a disproportionate number of the iron worker jobs in New York. But it reminded me a lot of coal miners, the miners that I've met in this region in terms of the culture and the way they work together.
And, and the danger informs the culture a little bit. When you work in very dangerous occupations, a real fraternity develops where you have almost this brotherly devotion. You're looking out for each other constantly. Now, with iron workers, as you mentioned, the Mohawk Indians, a lot of these guys truly are family. They're, even today, you have brothers working on steel and fathers and sons, and this has been going back with the Mohawks 120 years. They've been doing it. So you have guys working in New York today who are 5th generation, and when they walk a steel beam, they are almost literally walking in their great-grandfather's footsteps.
All right, well, Jim Rassenberger, the book is called High Steel, a great read. If you're a union guy, if you're an engineer, if you're corporate management, you'll probably find something of interest. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Just last holiday season, we featured a new author from our region whose tongue-in-cheek book called Alternate Histories just might have been a bit more alternate than historical.
I've always loved a lot of old pictures, images, lithographs, things like that. And when I moved to Pittsburgh in 2008, I got really interested in the city's history. Obviously, there's such a rich, history of things here. I was doing a lot of image research, and just one day I came across this view of, from looking down on Mount Washington, of the Pittsburgh and Allegheny City. At that time, Allegheny City and Pittsburgh hadn't merged, and this beautiful view of the point in downtown, and I kind of thought that you know, what would happen if there was a sort of Godzilla type monster in there, like right downtown? And so I kind of photoshopped him in using kind of digital effects to sort of age it to make it look like the monster was there when the print was drawn. And from there, it kind of snowballed. I showed that to a friend of mine who owns Wildcard in Lawrenceville here in Pittsburgh. She really liked the idea. She gave me the go-ahead to do a whole show of the pieces. And everything kind of sprang from there. They really was birthed here in Pittsburgh, sort of inspired by it. And since then, I've incorporated, you know, tentacles coming up from, you know, the Monongahela monster down around the point. I've done things with zombie maps that are in the book here. UFOs in downtown, just and also expanded to other cities and other historical areas as well.
Well, and looking at the book, yeah, you have prints and maps and photos or artwork, I guess, from all around the world now, all with your own special treatment. What is it you see in an image that sort of piques your interest?
Well, it all starts with the original image. I mean, I do as much, I do a lot of research to try to find things I like, and I change as little of the original image as possible. I do want to have some historical honesty, even though I'm adding in, you know, a robot, you know, standing at the Declaration of Independence or something. But you just sort of look for the space of what's open within that piece and think, you know, maybe a tentacle monster would work here. Maybe this would be a good thing to sort of document zombie outbreaks. It all depends, but everything comes from the original piece.
Great to hear it's working out for you, and you got the book out now, so where can people find it?
Certainly buy it through any of the online channels, you know, Amazon, anything like that. Their hard copies are available at some of the Barnes & Nobles here in town. They're also available at Wildcard, which is at 4209 Butler Street in Lawrenceville. I still work there sometimes to help out, so you might see me there. I'm happy to, if you stop by, I'm happy to sign a print for you as well.
Very cool. All right, the book is called The Alternate Histories of the World by Matthew Buchholz. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you, Bill.
Congratulations. Yeah. We'll be back with a Book Smart Dollars and Cents. Stick around.